All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're prying open the financial toolbox to really understand the essential tools you can use to build wealth. We're talking stocks, bonds, and a whole lot more.
You ever hear words like stocks, bonds, or mutual funds, and your brain just kinda shuts off? Yeah, you are not alone. They can sound super complicated, but honestly, the main ideas behind them are pretty simple. It's all about figuring out where to put your money so it can start working for you.
And that right there is the big idea for this whole explainer. We're going to look at all this financial stuff not as confusing jargon, but as tools. Simple as that, just different tools in a toolbox. Some are for playing it safe, some are for building a solid foundation, and, some are the power tools you use for some serious growth.
Okay, first up, let's grab the most basic and, well, the safest tools in our kit. These are the ones you reach for when your number one priority is just keeping your money safe and making sure you can get to it easily. So, welcome to the money market.
The money market is all about short-term deals, usually anything less than a year. The best way to think of it is like a high-security parking garage for your cash. Because the loans are so short and they're made to really reliable borrowers, they're considered extremely low risk. In fact, they're so safe and easy to turn back into cash, people often call them cash equivalents.
And the star player in the money market, that's got to be the Treasury bill, or T-bill for short. When you buy a T-bill, you are literally giving the U.S. government a short-term loan for a few weeks or months, and in return, they promise to pay you back in full. I mean, it doesn't get much safer than a promise from the U.S. government.
Now, here's the interesting part, how you actually make money on a T-bill. You don't get an interest check in the mail or anything like that. Instead, you buy the T-bill at a discount. So, for example, you might pay, say, $9,990 for a T-bill that the government promises to buy back from you for a full $10,000 in a few months. That $10 difference, that's your profit. This table just shows you all the different prices and discounts you can get.
Now, besides T-bills, there are a few other safety tools in this part of the toolbox. With a certificate of deposit, or a CD, you're lending money to a bank for a set amount of time. With commercial paper, you're lending to a big, well-known company. They're all just slightly different flavors of the same core idea: really safe, short-term loans.
Okay, we've got our safety tools laid out. Now it's time to build a solid foundation. Let's head over to the bond market and see how these tools help build our financial structure for the long haul.
So, before we go any further, this is probably the most important difference to get straight in your head: bonds versus stocks. With a bond, you are the lender. You give a loan to a company or a government, and they promise to pay you back with interest. But with a stock, you are an owner. You own a little piece of that company, for better or for worse. It's basically the difference between collecting rent versus owning the whole building.
So a bond is basically just a long-term loan. While a T-bill might just be for a few months, a bond can last for years, sometimes even 30 years. And in exchange for that loan, you get regular interest payments. They're called coupon payments. And then, at the very end of it all, you get your original investment back.
And this is a perfect real-world example of one type of bond, a municipal bond. When your city wants to build a new school or fix a bridge, it issues these bonds to raise the money. And to make them a little more tempting for you to buy, the interest you earn from these munis is often completely tax-free at the federal level, and sometimes even at the state and local levels too. So it's a way you can invest in your own community and get a nice little tax break.
All right, our foundation is set. The framework is up. Now it's time to break out the power tools, the tools designed for real growth. Let's talk about stocks.
When you buy a share of common stock, you literally become a part owner of that business. So if the company's a giant Lego castle, your one share is like one single brick. It's a tiny piece, for sure, but you're an owner. And that ownership is what gives stocks their potential to grow so much, way more than you'd typically get from a bond.
So what does owning that one little Lego brick actually get you? Well, first, something called a residual claim. All that means is if the company ever gets sold off after all the debts are paid, you get a piece of whatever's left. Second, you get a vote in big company decisions, like who gets to be on the board of directors. And third, and this is a huge one, you have limited liability. If the company goes totally bankrupt, the absolute most you can ever lose is the money you paid for your stock. That's it.
I know, a table full of numbers can look pretty intimidating, but just think of it like a daily report card for a company. Let's just look at one we all know, General Electric, or GE. See the close column? That tells us its price at the end of the trading day, $19.72 a share. And over here, 52WK high shows the highest price it hit in the last year, which was 21 bucks. See, it's just a quick snapshot of how the stock's doing.
So you can't just go out and buy the stock market, right? So how do we even measure how it's doing? Well, we use an index. An index, like the S&P 500, basically just bundles together 500 of the biggest companies in the US. By watching how the index moves up or down, you get a really good idea of how the market is doing overall. It's kind of like a fruit smoothie. You're getting a taste of all the different fruits blended together, which gives you the overall flavor of the market.
Okay, now we're moving to the advanced section of the toolbox. These are the specialized tools. They aren't for everyday projects, they're for very specific jobs, and trust me, they require a lot more know-how. Let's talk about derivatives.
A derivative gets its name because its value is literally derived from something else. So, going back to our analogy, you're not actually buying the Lego brick. Instead, you're making a contract, basically a bet, on what the price of that Lego brick is going to be in the future. Its value depends completely on the price of that other thing, whether it's a stock, a bond, or something else.
A really common type of derivative is a call option. This gives you the right, but, and this is important, not the obligation, to buy a stock at a specific price before a certain date. The best way to think about it is like a coupon. Let's say you get a coupon to buy a hot new video game for $50, and that coupon is good for the next month. If the game's price suddenly jumps to $70, your coupon just became super valuable. That's a call option. You're betting the price will go up.
And a flip side of that is a put option. This gives you the right, but again, not the obligation, to sell a stock at a specific price. This is kind of like insurance. Imagine you already own that video game, and you buy an insurance policy that lets you sell it for $50 anytime in the next month. If the game's price suddenly crashes to $30, you're protected. You can use your put option and sell it for that guaranteed $50. With a put, you're betting the price will go down.
So let's bring it all together. The big picture is this. You assemble your financial toolbox based on what you're trying to build. You start with a solid foundation of safe, easy-access money market tools. Then you build the framework with stable, reliable bonds. For growth, you bring in the power tools. That's your stocks. And only for very specific, advanced jobs would you even think about reaching for the expert tools, like derivatives.
Every single tool has its purpose, right? From the simple safety of a T-bill to the complex potential of an option. But the real power isn't just knowing what each tool does on its own. It comes from understanding how they can all work together. So the question isn't really, what are these things anymore? The real question is, now that you know the tools, what do you want to build?